going to begin with a story that I never anticipated or hoped to tell in public. I started and ran a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. called Innovation Network. I started that in the early 1990s. About 8 years into my tenure, my office manager, Mary, asked to meet with me. I adored Mary. She was my go-to person to get anything done, wildly efficient. She was about my size. She loved football and People magazine, just like me. Best of all, Mary was an ex-Marine with the guns to prove it. When we sat down, she was visibly nervous. She took a deep breath. And she said, you know, when I started here 3 years ago, I wanted to run through walls for you. And now all I want to do is run away. And she did, and I was devastated. When a Marine tells you that you're no longer worth defending, something has gone terribly wrong. What Mary was reacting to was the gap between how I talked about leadership as a very collaborative and participatory and empowering activity for a whole organization, and how I practiced it. I had created a fear-based fortress, and within that fortress, I needed to matter the most. I had the biggest office, the biggest paycheck, the biggest title, and I needed to get the most credit. And it was a zero-sum game. The more I needed to matter, the less good people like Mary could. It was demoralizing and diminishing for people like Mary. Now, I was practicing leadership the way I was taught in graduate school and beyond. I was invincible and invulnerable, decisive and sure. However, it was a suit of armor that frankly did not fit me well. Doesn't fit a lot of women well, but it seemed like the only way to go at the time. I left my organization shortly after Mary did to start a new journey to find a new and different way to lead. And right at that moment, a revolution happened. In an instant, we were swimming in a sea of social media, starting with email and blogs and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, now Instagram and Snapchat. We were connected to one another. We were sharing, sometimes oversharing, stories and ideas. We became artists, started in businesses, could sell things, organize, and protest. People were self-determining. We no longer needed permission from organizations to do things or organizations to serve as intermediaries. It was a revolution because power was being pulled from institutions to individuals. In addition, leadership was being pulled out of the C-suite, the top of the organizational chart. In a networked environment, leadership is a function of what you do, not where you sit. Now, just as this was occurring, though, traditional organizations, instead of embracing this amazing human capital out there, doubled down on their command and control hierarchies. They got further inside of their fortresses, like it was still 1998, like the world hadn't changed at all. It created a collision of an ecosystem of people who wanted to be heard, running head first into these fortresses. There's a technical term for this situation. It's called a huge problem. A quick aside. I'm going to continue to use the words organization and leadership, although in a networked environment, the way we now live, where people are visible and can be heard and where things can scale instantly and inexpensively, organizations mean any gathering of people with a common purpose. It could be a block party, it could be a Fortune 500 company. And leadership refers to the person or people who get everybody rowing in the same direction towards a common goal with the same culture, the same values. Okay, back to our huge problem. We've got these fortresses and we've got people running headfirst into them. This is not an academic issue. We experience this every day. You go into a store that has a big sign that says customers matter the most as you stand there ignored. 70% of complaints to specific companies on Twitter are not answered. Here's one of my favorites. You get an email from the CEO of a cause you've been giving to for years. That's kind of exciting until you realize that the email's from a dummy address and says do not reply. That they clearly don't want to speak to me or with me in any way. This is really astounding. It's counterproductive and it's demoralizing. So I have spent the last 10 years trying to figure this out. Why does this keep happening? I've spoken to thousands of people around the world about this. And it comes down to just one word: fear. Organizations have an outsized fear of the world that masquerades as smart management. When you walk into the boardroom and hear people talk about how frightening it is out there, right? That the world is teeming with wingnuts and wackadoodles, ready to attack us. They might not use those words, but that's the idea, right? And it creates an environment where any risk becomes unacceptable, where it becomes safer to sit behind your walls and continue to work at people rather than with them, because you don't trust them to do the kinds of things that you want done. This fear turns into something I call the churn, which is the over-busyness of trying to control people and things in ways that you can't. It's expensive and it's exhausting. The fear and the churn are choices. They're not necessities. And there's only one path that they lead to, and that's irrelevance. There's an alternative. Here's what I've come up with. I call it matterness. It is the idea that leadership means enthusiastically and actively making other people matter more. Meaning not just enabling them to say things, we can all say something, but to actually have them be heard. That's very different. We can stuff those suggestion boxes all we want. It's not the same as an organization listening to them. It means turning people from passive audiences into active problem solvers and co-creators with us. This is not a better way of customer service. This is not about serving people. This is about fundamentally reorganizing the relationship between people and organizations. Matterness has three key components. It begins with focusing on principles over process. The only way to get out of the churn, that ever-present busyness, is to focus on the important stuff, the fundamental principles upon which your effort is based. And I hope one of those principles will be that people matter the most. Spartan Race is a company that that organizes obstacle courses around the country. It's only 4 years old. The most difficult obstacle course has a disclaimer you sign that says, "I know I may die" on this course. They prepare their participants well online, tell them how to get in shape, what to eat, what to bring. The race happens on land, of course, and then they come back online and they invite their participants to share their experiences, provide feedback in public, celebrate, connect, get ready for the next race. Spartan Race understands that we're not living online or on land, we're living in an integrated space of both, but most of all they understand that the racers matter the most, and that's how you get 5 million followers on Facebook. The second element is rehumanizing leadership. Logos don't speak, people do. And we have this incredible tool set of social media that allow conversations to happen. But organizational leaders taught in a broadcast model from last century are still using these platforms as enormous press releases. I can assure you, nobody is sitting on their couch at home waiting for your press release and waiting to be told what to do. They are waiting to be engaged in a conversation with you. When Jennifer James had her first baby, she was a little bit lonely, so she took to blogging, which she enjoyed. Still didn't fulfill her entirely. She thought, oh, it would be so much fun to have a club of other moms who blogged. So she started the Mom Bloggers Club. And Jennifer runs that site as a great big gathering every day. She feeds information, connects people to one another and to resources. It still didn't feel like enough, even though she had almost 20,000 moms on her site. So one day, a couple years ago, she posted a question: who'd like to do something more? Who'd like to start Mom Bloggers for Social Good with me? And a couple of hundred moms raised their hands. And Jennifer started that site where they learned about important issues like maternal health and child nutrition. They organized trips to countries sponsored by brands and by causes. These are vibrant communities where Jennifer is in conversation with members every single day. As one of the moms told me, Jennifer makes me feel important and powerful every day. Are there organizations that are making you feel important and powerful every day? The final element is learning how to lead crowds. People have lots and lots of choices of organizations to engage with out there. They're going to gravitate to the places where they can do meaningful things, where they feel like they matter. Learning how to work with people as crowds, people who are going to come and go as they please, not necessarily as you want, is a key element to being successful in a networked environment. 2 years ago, Karen Klein was a middle school bus monitor in Greece, New York, outside of Rochester. One morning, 3 of the teenage boys on the bus started to taunt her with really awful remarks. And a 4th boy videotaped it and helpfully posted it on YouTube. It went viral instantly. 2 days later, Karen Klein was talking to Matt Lauer about this on the Today Show. Matt Sidorov, a nutritionist in Toronto, saw the story on his local news. He went to Indiegogo and posted a fundraiser for Karen. Let's raise $5,000, he said, to send Karen on a nice vacation. In 2 hours, $5,000 had been raised. By the end of the first day, $100,000 had been raised. 2 weeks, $700,000 had been raised. Karen Klein is no longer a bus monitor. Max inherently understood that he could create a crowd of people with a common person, with a common purpose, to do something meaningful. Organizations need to take this lesson well. So here's the good news. Matterness doesn't cost anything. You don't need a fancy pants consultant. You don't need a new workbook. You don't need a gadget. What you do need is a change in perspective from understanding now that leadership is about giving, not getting. It takes some practice. I've been practicing this for years. Find a small place to try it out this year. Maybe find some special way to thank people who support your efforts. Have a small gathering. Give a lunch. Call up 20 people randomly and just thank them. Ask people what you should do instead of telling them what you're going to do. I can't guarantee what the results of those experiments are going to be, but I can guarantee you one thing. Anybody that you make feel like they matter more to you and an effort will willingly and enthusiastically run through any wall with you. Thank you very much.